Hello. We're back. Last time we went over Burger King, um, the king of burgers, and they won because the court reasoned that they're the king. So you can't go up against the king and expect to win. You know what I'm saying? At least in the realm of burgers. And now we're gonna go into Asahi, and Asahi is going to be a very special case because it is the exception to a lot of shoe questions. Um, so the takeaway before going into it is going to be stream of consciousness and know that this is not the rule today. Okay. There's not a clear rule. And you'll see at the end of this case that uh, I didn't write it down, but the way it was decided does not make it binding in any way. So the facts of the case. So the name of the case, Asahi versus Superior Court of California. And Asahi is a parts manufacturer that is in Japan. Okay, and when we get to the facts, that'll become more clear why that's important. And the appellee or the defendant, sorry, this is technically the appellant, and this is the appellee. Uh, it's a California court, but it's also Zerker, who is the person harmed, trying to haul Asahi into a California court. Okay. Now, Zerker, I will refer to Zerker as Z, and he was driving a Honda motorcycle. Okay. Huh. I have no qualms against Honda motorcycles, TVH. I think they're actually pretty decent quality. And he lost control one day, and he got into a really bad accident that injured him really bad, but then it also killed his wife, who was presumably riding with him on the motorcycle. So Z, I can imagine he was very distraught and very upset, and he sued for products liability because the claim was that the tire was defective and where it shouldn't have been defective at the time. Um, and so he sued Chen. This is Chen. This should be Chang, right? Chang, maybe, yeah, Chang Shen. Chen Xing, this is the tube maker. This company is in China, and Asahi is the tube valve maker. And so the way this works is, at least described by the court, is Asahi is the tube valve maker, and they sell some of their stuff to Changshin, and then Changshin makes their stuff and then sells it to a whole bunch of different companies. One of them being Honda. Okay. Now I think Zerker also sued Honda. It doesn't actually say. And maybe it does, and I just overlooked it. But I would guess that he sued Honda as well. Maybe not. So Chang settled with Asahi, and so Asahi, or yeah, Chang settled with Zerker, sorry, and Asahi was the only one left in the lawsuit. So um, now the also worth noting that the California Supreme Court said before the U.S. Supreme Court here that Asahi can be hailed into California because they get a lot of benefits from California. And so it is not unreasonable to them to exercise specific personal jurisdiction. Okay. So the question is, did Asahi establish sufficient minimum context? This is the acronym I'm going to be using in California by purposely availing themselves to California. Okay. So the whole case is a question of the last part of sufficient minimum context test where it is um, where it is consistent with traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice. Okay, actually, let me actually write that out right here because it is important to know this one. Um, quote unquote quote right does not offend traditional notions of fair play and substantial justice. Okay. And the question is like, is it fair play and substantial just in this case? Because there is some argument as to purposeful availment, but is it reasonable? So we kind of translate to this to reasonable. Okay. Reasonable. Okay. And O'Connor writes for the majority, and I will put majority in quotations because it's kind of like a plurality instead, where five of the justices did not actually go along with O'Connor here, and so it's not binding technically, because not all five agreed on the reasoning, but four agreed on the reasoning and five agreed on like the outcome of it, so to speak. So, so technically it's not rule. And the big takeaways from O'Connor's holding is that there is no purposeful availment. I believe there was no purposeful availment. Let me make sure actually. Yeah, it's not purposeful availment because there's no business in California. Asahi doesn't actually do or conduct any business, no ads, no sales. They don't really target. Okay. They don't take their products and specifically look at the map of the United States and go, we choose, X, Y, and Z to sell our stuff to. Okay. Because they sold to Chang and had no idea, right? Well, maybe. Okay. And not only that, but O'Connor says that in order to be reasonable to hail them in, is that um, you need their conduct to be um, directed at California. That there's a reasonable look, there's a reasonable way to say that they are acting in a way that they know that their stuff is going to be sold and they will benefit from California. Whereas just dropping it in the stream and not knowing where it's going to go is not enough. Okay. Now, Brennan's dissent, which is also, I mean, dissents are just not binding. But Brennan says that availment, so he disagrees, right? He disagrees like entirely, not even like just on the reasoning, like he just disagrees on the outcome as well. And he says that there is availment because when you enter business, you know that you're going to get benefits from places. Like you just will get benefits from places. And that's part of going into a business such as Asahi's. Moreover, that because they drop their goods into the stream of commerce, okay, um, it's not unreasonable. As a matter of fact, it is reasonable to know that they could be hauled into court somewhere. Like that is the price you pay for going into a big business where something may go wrong. And just because you didn't know doesn't mean that you didn't reasonably understand that something could go wrong somewhere and that you may be held responsible somewhere. Okay. Um, a big takeaway too is this little part here is that typically speaking, okay, and Asahi is the exception here, that if you meet the purposeful availment here, and like Asahi kind of purposely availed themselves in a way where they were like, you know, I mean, I guess it's debatable. That in the stream of commerce, I think I might have said consciousness before, but in the stream of commerce, you will get benefits from places, and so purposeful availment is typically going to hold. But it failed the reasonable part, and so therefore there was no sufficient minimum contacts. But this is where Goggins said, this is a very rare occurrence right here. When you hit this, you will generally almost always hit reasonable as well. Okay. That if there are any, if ever there's a fact pattern that looks like Asahi, like almost exactly, then you can make the argument that it's not reasonable. But right, generally you hit this too. Okay. keep that in mind. So Asahi should not act as a rule in your head, just as a fun exception. Okay. Emphasis on the fun.